what we should do that we may be able to bear reproach. But you will say, these arguments may move us to do it and convince us we should do it, but how shall we do it? First, be sure to keep conscience clear, that do not upbraid thee, be careful of what you do, and then you need not be much careful of what men say. If conscience do not reproach you, reproach without will not much move you. Conscience's testimony for thee is more than 10,000 slanders against thee, as the storms and winds without do not move the earth, but vapours within, that causes earthquakes. As Ambrose says of David, he was not much troubled with Shimei's railing, because his conscience did abound with good works. If thou canst say with Job, chapter 27, verse 6, My heart shall not reproach me as long as I live, thou art safe enough from the evil of reproach. Secondly, if you be failing in anything, begin with yourselves before any begin with you. Accuse yourselves before God first. So some interpret that place in Psalm 119, I am wiser than mine enemies. Though my enemies are witty and do plot, and their malice do help them with invention, yet I am wiser. I can find out the ways of my own heart and my own evils better than all my enemies. Thirdly, Christians should exercise themselves in great things, in the things of God and Christ and eternity, and labor to greaten their spirits in a holy manner, and be above reproach. It was a speech of Seneca, men that know their greatness are not troubled with reproaches. He will think himself above reproach. And therefore, if our spirits be truly greatened, not with pride, but with the exercising of our spirits in things that are above the world, reproaches would be nothing in our eyes. It is a notable expression that St. John hath against the evil tongue of Diotrephes, Epistle 3, verse 10. He prates against us with malicious words. In the original, it is, he trifles. Although his words were malicious, and Diotrephes a great man, yet all was but trifles. So high was St. John's spirit above them. Aquinas gives 2 signs of a weak-spirited man, one, that he delights in light and foolish words, a second, that he cannot endure contempt. Such a man, says he, although he should work miracles, yet he is beneath the perfection of virtue, his spirit hath no true greatness in it. The sinking of the heart under reproaches, or to be put out of the way by them, argues too vile a pusillanimity, such a poor low spirit as is not consistent with the true magnanimity of a Christian. Gulielmus Parisiensis, in his treatise De Veritudibus, hath notable expressions to this purpose. Quote, Little things, saith he, yea, mere nothings, cast down poor weak-spirited men. The words of vain men are small things. Whosoever fears such words, so as to do evil, or to leave off good, are the weakest of men. These are like unto soldiers who are cast down and overcome, not with some violent strong tempest, but with some small weak puff of wind. These are the more ridiculous, and not to be reckoned amongst warriors. Nay, they are not to be reckoned amongst men who fall off for fear of words which yet have not been spoken, as if a man should fall for fear of the wind which yet blows not. Such are those who dare not do good or leave evil for fear of reproaches. Fourthly, another means is to make your moan to God, and lay your case before him, as Hezekiah, when Rabshakeh came and reviled God and the people of God, he went and spread the letter before God, and made his moan before God. If we can do so, there will be that satisfaction to our souls that is unspeakable, and that will be a great argument of our innocency. Many will say, Oh, they are innocent, and God knows their hearts, but can you go and make your moan before God when you are reproached, and acquaint God with the cause, and receive refreshment that way? As Job 16, verse 20, My friends scorn me, but mine eyes pour out tears to God. And David, Psalm 109, verses 1 and 2. Hold not thy peace, O God of my praise, for the mouth of the wicked and the mouth of the deceitful are opened against me. They have spoken against me with a lying tongue. They have compassed me about with words of hatred. They are mine adversaries, but I prayer. For so the words in the original, not I give myself, but only thus, but I prayer. As if he should say, as for my part, all that I do to help myself withal is to pray to God and make my moan. Others have their evil tongues to help them, and run to this witness and that witness, to seek to help themselves, but I prayer. Psalm 57, verses 2 and 3. I cry unto God most high. He shall send from heaven and save me from reproach of him that would swallow me up. Selah. God shall send forth his mercy and truth. A carnal heart hath no way to deliver itself but by reproaches again, by running up and down from one witness to another, but a gracious heart hath other ways to help itself. It cries to God Most High, and looks for help from heaven. God sends forth his mercy and truth to help, and there is help indeed. Fifthly, another help is this: if you can but get your hearts quietly and kindly to lament the condition of your reproachers, this will be a marvelous means to sweeten the heart, and to help to bear reproaches. It was the answer of Socrates to one who wondered at his patience towards one who reviled him. Quote, "If we should meet one," says he, "whose body were more unsound than ours, should we be angry with him, and not rather pity him? Why then should we not do the like to him whose soul is more diseased than ours?" End quote. The folly of our reproaches should cause us to pity them, to be patient towards them, and pass by the wrong they do unto us. This was one of the arguments that Abigail brought to David to quiet his spirit that was so stirred against Nabal because of that reproach he cast upon him. Nabal, saith she, is his name, and folly is with him. It is his folly, rather pity him. It is too low a thing for such a spirit as David's to be stirred with it. Instead of being troubled with the reproaches that are upon you, your spirits should be most troubled for their sin. Now there is infinite cause we have to be troubled for their sin, more than for any evil that befalls us. An evil tongue devours, and is an abomination, and in Proverbs 8 verse 13 God says, "The froward mouth he hates." Now if you have any love, you should think thus: this poor man, what hath he done? He hath brought himself under the hatred of God. Now this should mightily affect the hearts of the godly. As he is an abomination to God, so he is an abomination to men. Proverbs 24 verse 9, "The scorner is an abomination to men." Scornful spirits love to cast shame and ignominy upon others. And in Proverbs 18 verse 7, "A fool's mouth is his destruction, and his lips are the snare of his soul." We should think, he hath but ensnared his own soul, and so fall a lamenting of his wretched condition. And so, in Isaiah 33 verse 10, "Your breath as fire shall devour you." If the breath of any man devours him, the breath of revilers and reproachers and slanderers does. The heathens called a reproacher a three-tongued man, because he hurts three at once. He hurts him that he reproaches, and him that heard the reproach, and himself worst of all. Do but get power over your hearts to bewail this sin, and your reproach will not be so troublesome. Trilinguis Galentius, a writer upon Exodus 22 verse 28, observes the exceeding patience of those three emperors, Theodosius, Honorius, Arcadius, towards those who spake evil of them. They would have them subject to no punishment, for they said, if it comes from lightness of spirit, it is to be contemned. If from madness, it is worthy of pity. If from injury, it is to be pardoned. Wrongs are to be forgiven. Again, labor to possess your souls with the reality of the sweet of, and the honor there is, in the ways of God, so no reproach will be grievous to you. As it is said of the covetous man, when some told him, "Such and such hiss at thee," but, says he, "I care not, I rejoice in what I have at home, that I have so much money in my chest." So it should be with a gracious heart. He should say, "I have sweet enough in my own heart. What need I trouble myself with what others think or say?" Seventhly, labor to satisfy your souls in the glory of God and Christ. Though my name be cast out as filth, yet the name of God and Christ is blessed and glorious, and so shall be forever. Let devils and wicked men do what they can against it. It was a good speech of Luther, writing to his friend Spalatinus, bemoaning his condition to him, because of the scorn and contempt he suffered, yet comforting himself in this, that Christ lived and reigned. Luther is accounted even a devil, but Christ lives and reigns. He adds his Amen to it. Thirdly, it is not enough to bear reproaches patiently, but we must bear them fruitfully. A Christian should think he hath not done that which belongs to a Christian, unless he hath got some good by them. A Christian should not think it enough to free himself from the scorn of the tongue, but he must improve it for good by it. First, consider what ends God aims at by it, and labor to work them upon yourselves, that you may attain to those ends. Secondly, labor to draw what good instructions you can from the reproaches of others, as namely thus, when I hear men reproach and revile, oh, what a deal of evil is there secretly in the heart of man, that is not discovered till I have occasion. I did not think that such and such could ever have been reproachers, if they had not been provoked. Again, do I see another so vigilant over me to find me out, to reproach me? How vigilant should I be over myself to find out what is in me, to humble me? Again, is there so much evil to be under the stroke of man's tongue? What a great evil is it to be under the stroke of God's justice! Lastly, to be fruitful, that is, set upon what duty God calls for at the present. Surely this is one great general duty, that the less credit I see I have in the world, let me labour to have more credit in heaven. I see there is a breach of my name here, let me seek to make up my name in heaven. 4. And then they must be born joyfully, but we shall speak of that afterwards in the third point, that a gracious heart is not only willing to bear reproach when God calls unto it, but in the cause of Christ, to triumph and rejoice in his reproaches. Lastly, we should return good for evil. Then you come to the top of Christianity. This is a sign of great progress in religion. If I be weak, saith Ambrose, perhaps I may pardon one charging me falsely, but if I have profited, although not altogether perfect, though he flows in upon me with reproaches, I hold my peace and answer nothing. But if I be perfect, I then bless him that reviles me, according to that of St. Paul, being reviled we bless. If you can do thus, if you can heartily pray for your reproaches, and desire good to them, and be willing to take notice of any good in them, to clear up their innocency when there is just cause, if you can be ready to offer any offices of love and respect and kindness to them, and so heap coals of fire upon them, this is a great sign of grace. You have made a good progress indeed in God's way. Matthew 5, verses 44 and 45. Bless them, says Christ, that curse you. Pray for them that despitefully use you, that ye may be the children of your Father, etc. Why? Were they not children before? Yes, but this declares it. Now God owns them for his children. If we behave ourselves thus, we shall have the comfort of this, that our reproaches come to us as to God's people, whereas others cannot have the comfort of this. You cannot have any comfort from this argument, unless you behave yourselves under reproaches after this manner. Now what a great evil is this, to cut a man off from that comfort which hath been spoken of in this argument. And if you do behave yourselves Christianly under reproaches, God is more and more engaged to stand for your names, and you are more prepared for glory. As he is not fit to govern, that is not fit to serve, but he that is fit to serve is so much the fitter to govern. So those that can bear disgrace are fit to be honoured, and the greater glory will be afterwards. As the sun that shines through the clouds shines the brightest, so when honour shall come through dishonour, it shall be the greatest honour. And then you shall come to know that honour is sanctified to you, and that it is in love, and you shall be more able to rejoice in the honour that God shall bring to your names than you would have done, and so your reproachers shall be servants to you. There is only one place of Scripture that I shall add, and so I have done with this point. Job 17, compare the 6th verse with the 8th and 9th verses. Verse 6, he hath made me also a byword of the people. Job was a godly man, and yet he was made a byword. What then? At the 8th verse, upright men shall be astonished at this. How? 2 ways. Either they shall be astonished at the horrible wickedness of men that shall contemn so godly a man as Job was, and say, Lord, what boldness is in the hearts of the wicked, that shall presume to dare to contemn such a servant of thine. Or the upright shall be astonished, they shall admire at the wonderful way of God towards his people, that the Lord shall suffer wicked men so far to go on in wickedness as to reproach his people. The innocent, the godly man, shall see those that are hypocrites, for not only gross profane ones are reproaches oftentimes, but hypocrites. The innocent shall stir up himself against the hypocrite. He shall not be dampened, but stir up his thoughts against the hypocrite. The righteous also shall hold on his way, shall not decline, and not only so, but he that hath clean hands shall be stronger and stronger. And so I pass to the next point,